Sabrina, we are good to go.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 8th meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. I will call the meeting to order and entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Go ahead.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved by Bankin, seconded by Perez. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. And Director Linkaitis, will you please read our purpose statement?
The Ames Community School District commits to equity and access that empowers every individual to reach their full personal and educational potential.
Thank you. And then we will move on to our first agenda item, which is our COVID-19 update. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Reisner and Dr. Arnold.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold.
All right, so good evening, and here is the update on the COVID-19 status in our buildings and our local and school metrics. The first slide shows the COVID-19 positives and quarantines in our school. Today, we have 7 students positive for COVID-19 and 17 quarantining due to being identified as close contacts. Those following the dashboard may have noticed that we did have an increases in cases at our secondary level last week. Most of those cases were directly related to an out-of-school club sports exposure and subsequent contact of those individuals with other students or family members outside of the school setting. There's been no spread of positive COVID cases connected to those contacts or to those positives within the school setting. On the positive note, if you notice, we currently have no staff positive for COVID-19 and only 1 quarantining due to close contact. And we have no staff currently pending test results. And this is the first time we've been this low in staff cases since the end of October, which is good news. The graphs below show the positives and quarantines since October. And the next slide shows our Story County metrics. The Story County 14-day average new daily case rate is 18.6. And that case count has continued to be somewhere between the 17 and 20 range since the last meeting. Our 14-day positivity is 4.3% and our 7-day positivity is 4.0%. And we continue to see the impact of that change in methodology that I discussed the last meeting for state reporting, and consistently see that news in the 7 and 14-day case count. And that seems to be where we've been, positivity, and that seems to be where we've been for that as well. The next slide shows our school absence metrics, and you can see for both the student and staff 5-day absences, we are in the green and have been in the green, and you see the corresponding graphs below. We have not come really close to that 10% rate for students or staff, again, keeping us green since our last meeting. The next slide provides just a reminder about the CDC international travel guidance that has been out there since the end of January. CDC does not recommend that people are traveling internationally at this time, but if they do, there are some requirements for testing before travel and guidance for quarantining following the return to the United States. And this guidance pertains to both students and staff that may be planning to travel internationally over spring break. This also, just to clarify, those who are fully vaccinated or have had COVID-19 in the past 90 days still are required to follow the guidelines. So still have to get tested and do need to quarantine. And just also, this testing guidance doesn't cover travel within the United States. However, CDC does still advise that those who are traveling within the US continue to wear a mask, avoid large gatherings, and practice social distancing and follow all the other mitigation strategies that we have been doing. I know everyone's starting to get that, if we haven't all already been there, pandemic fatigue, but it's important that we keep up with that, especially with coming into spring break and seeing how our numbers have, in general, been doing really well. Our final slide, I always like to end with something good, is our vaccine update. And we have had 6 vaccine clinics. 4 were first dose clinics, primarily given in the 2 second dose clinics. So of the 683 people who registered to receive the vaccine through the district, 5% were able to get vaccinated elsewhere outside of one of our clinics. 34% have received both doses. 40% have received 1 dose. 14% are scheduled to receive their first dose on the 26th, which is our next available first dose clinic. And then there are 7% still left to schedule an appointment on that March 26th clinic. There are available spots to cover all of the people who still need or have requested to get a vaccine through the district. I do know that in that group of 7%, there's probably some people who may have gotten that vaccine elsewhere, or may have changed their mind, or may have statuses that don't allow them to get vaccinated at this time. So, but there's plenty of space still left for those who would like to get vaccinated. We will meet the target that the Biden administration set of having 100% of our staff able to receive at least their first dose by the end of March. And actually at that point, 75% of our staff will have received both doses. Our final clinic will be on April 9th, and that will be the second dose clinic for those receiving the first dose on the 26th. And after that clinic, there are plans for any remaining staff who weren't able to get vaccinated at this time, or new hires, or with a status change that would now allow them to be vaccinated, would be vaccinated directly through Story County Public Health or through one of the other local pharmacy-based clinics. And we do have some contacts with that to help get people in. So that ends my update. What questions can I answer?
Looking at this chart, so you mean really that 74% of people have received 1 dose, right?
As of right
1
now.
dose or more?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Kathy, do you happen to know what our percentage is for Story County of people that has been vaccinated in the county? Do you happen to know that?
I don't. I know that we are still in 1B1. They did relax that, I believe, today to allow those under 65 with other conditions to be vaccinated, but I don't know the numbers. I can look that up though and get that to you.
That's okay. Don't go through. I was just wondering if you happen to know. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dr. Arnold? All right, we will move on to the COVID-19 expenditures, and Chris Stensland.
Good evening, board. I've included the report I've been giving you every month since we received the second round of the ESSER funds. Once we had reconciled the previous expenditures in January, we're now into just our regular routine. So the February expenditures for gear continues to pay for our hotspots, and for the ESSER 2 funds is mainly the 3 staff members that are being funded by ESSER 2 plus any PPE and substitute teachers that are directly related to COVID.
Any questions for Chris?
Chris, do you see either the ESSER 2 funds being used for summer school?
Absolutely, that is definitely in our plans. I know they are planning summer school at this point, and that is how we are going to fund it. I don't believe they're going to need all of those ESSER funds to be able to do that, but yeah, that is certainly our first priority.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? All right, that will conclude our COVID-19 update, and we will now take public comments on anything related to the COVID-19 update. And Eric, if you can pull up our statement on public comments, I will read that at this time. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school. Others will state their name and address. And if you have a comment on the COVID-19 update, please raise your hand and you will be given permission to speak. Okay, I don't see any hands raised for the COVID-19 update, so we will move on to our discussion items. And first we will have our board committee update.
The Audit and Budget Oversight Committee update is what we talked about at our last board meeting. We've been talking about scheduling another one in the near future.
Great.
I had one question regarding the audit and budget. It listed in there again the decrease from open enrollment of 720,000. Now that we're past March 1st, do we know where we sit for next year? Is our decrease actually 126 students or?
So the decrease in open enrollment were for those that had requested it the prior year. So the March 1st is for the will be kids that we will count in the fall of 21 for the 22-23 school year.
Correct. Do we know what that's going to be? Because we had discussed, right, that we didn't know whether or not it would be an ongoing budget deficit or if it'd be a one-year thing.
Kindergarten open enrollment is open through the 1st of September. But at this point, we are down in the open enrollment requests in. We normally at this point have about 30 kindergarten open requests and we have 13. We also are down at middle school and that primarily seems to be in 6th grade. A lot of times the whole grade shared students from United will open enroll for 6th. They're not starting middle school in 7th grade. And we're down significantly, well, significantly compared to what we are, about 1/3 of where we normally are in there.
And when do they have to, 6th graders have to, is that the March 1 date?
March 1st, because
so that's passed.
they can choose whole grade sharing at any time, but if they want to open enroll for 6th grade, because remember whole grade sharing is 7/12. If they want to start in 6th, they've got to meet that March 1st deadline.
All right. Anything else for audit and budget? Then we will go on to equity.
The equity committee met. I haven't done the minutes yet, and we're going to have a work session around the results of the survey that Erin administered to the administrators and the SROs. So we'll have a work session about that in a couple of weeks.
And policy also met. I'm sorry.
Just as a follow-up on the equity committee, what we plan to do, because we felt like it was a lot of data to digest, we will have a work session and include that data in the work session and give the board time to process it. And then we'll come back and have it as a discussion item. So we're able to then go in more depth. We'll have the board will have the ability to ask questions when the data is presented, but we know that it's a lot to take in. And so we wanted to also then bring it back so that people could ask additional questions.
I'm sorry, I'm going to just point of clarification. So we'll have the SRO, that's when we're getting the data. I'll call it the SRO work session, but then it will follow up with a discussion at a regular board meeting.
So as JD emailed in the last, in the email about the work session coming up, the 2 items One of the two items will be panorama. The other will be the SRO data. And so those are going to be the two items that we cover. And then we will follow up at the following board meeting with it as a discussion item as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
All right, and then policy committee met, and I am also behind on minutes, but we will be discussing all of the policies that we went over in the policies for discussion below, so we will cover those shortly. All right, Central Iowa Metro League realignment, and we will turn this one over to Judge Johnston.
Thank you, everybody. Superintendent Reisner, do you want to say anything on the front end of this? Our report and data has been pretty extensive on this topic.
Yeah, you bet. So this item came to us, the superintendents. I know it was discussed. It's been discussed multiple times since I arrived in Ames with superintendents, but this year there was another ask by the superintendents to create some equity again within the CIML and realignment. And what came back as a proposal was not in line with what the principals or superintendents felt created equity. And so at that point, principals met with athletic directors and superintendents, and then the superintendents came back with kind of a proposal. I was included in that after kind of they had formed, these are the two options. And so what this would be, we would, and you can see it, I don't know, Eric, if you want to pull that document up so we can see the realignment. So there's really either we would stay in the CIML and we would play the schools that are listed on the remaining CIML conference part, or we would move to the proposed Big Ten conference. And let me clarify, Big Ten conference is already out of date. So the superintendents that have been meeting, I think there'll be another name that comes out of it, but for right now, that's what it's being called. Since this was put together, there's maybe a couple more schools that are looking at joining that Big Ten, so it'd be 12, and hence Big Ten doesn't really work. So really, the concern ongoing of the superintendents and of the principals, and I think athletic directors, are just the outcomes and the decrease in our student population participating. In Ames, we've also experienced that decrease in participation. Judge can talk more about that. And then in addition to that, we know that, really kids like to experience some success. It's hard night after night to go out and compete with schools that are beating us on a regular basis. If you scroll up or down, however you look at that, there's a lot more data as well, but this is just a quick breakdown of our records. As you can see, we haven't fared so well in many of the areas. So if you look at baseball, softball, volleyball, wrestling, those are really tough numbers. And so the goal is really to create an environment where our kids experience success. We want our kids to participate. It doesn't do us a lot of good if we only have a handful of kids that are participating. And really the mission of public education is to get kids participating. And so that is the goal. This would be a move for 3 to 4 years, and then it would be reevaluated. So after tonight, the next step would be that we will bring a resolution to the board. And the resolution would be for us to separate from the CIML, leave the CIML, and create or move to this subgroup. Judge, I don't, Judge, I can let you speak on the communications that you've done if you want to talk about the coaches and
Sure.
others that you've met with.
Yeah, we've had input from our head coaching group at Ames High. We've had input from a Booster Club executive group and some past presidents that know a little bit about Ames High athletics and have some history with us. We had a panel of student athletes that we worked with about 2 weeks ago. I've met with Spencer Essinger, our middle school AD, to talk about this. And, it's just, when you get down to the win-loss records, that's the thing that really stands out when you start educating our stakeholders here on maybe what's best for all of us. And, one example, somebody has said, hey, your swim team, they're really darn good, and they are. So when you sit down with Joe Fisher, our interim coach, and you talk about how he can be challenged, we do have flexibility in our scheduling matrices to challenge that sport. And our 2 tennis programs fare pretty well right now against the suburban schools. It's just, this gives us the opportunity to play the group of 10 more frequently to help us have a better chance night in and night out over the long haul of a season. So the recommendation is to move forward with Superintendent Reisner, what she's recommended tonight. And I can help answer a few more questions, but we've tried to put as much data in there as we can in this report for you.
The win-loss records. Oh, go ahead.
I was looking at the data. The enrollment numbers seemed surprising to me. Ames High enrollment seems higher than that. Do those represent like the enrollments right now of students in the building at all the places, or?
So the enrollments are based off of 3 classes, and don't ask me why, but that is our most recent 9, 10, and 11 grades combined. Typically we're around 1380 or something in that neighborhood. But they take the first 3 grades, and I think some of that has to do with seniors graduating early and not, I think that's just one piece of it, but those are 3 class numbers there.
Okay, that makes more sense. Now the numbers, yeah,
Yep.
The suburban school numbers make more sense to me now too.
I will add that to I should have added that. I apologize. I'll add that to just as a parentheses, bracket that so it's clear.
Judge, could
Yes.
you expand a little bit on the piece about the decrease in participation? I'm kind of wondering about that. What do you think it attributes that, and when it comes, how do you connect this to being a good thing for us to move to the group 10? How do you make that connection?
Well, we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years a decrease in participation across the board. Just in general terms, almost every sport. It's hard to deal with the COVID year because we are down, and so I tried to back that year out. But just in general terms, we're down in almost every sport, and it's trending down. It's not a 1 or 2 year kind of blip on the radar. And when you look at these records, part of it is just kids losing and not enjoying sports. And, it not only affects the kids, it affects the coaches, it affects the environment, the team chemistry. If you're winning and being successful, you have more energy in the gym from the community or on the field or wherever you're competing.
I think in addition, Judge, to add to that, your gates are higher as well. So we really rely on gate revenue, and your gates are higher. That's that is the reason this is coming to you as the board, because we are experiencing, and take Ames out of it because we probably are not experiencing the same decrease. We are seeing a decrease, but probably not at the level some of these other schools are, but the rest of them are really significantly experiencing that decrease because it becomes an issue of equity. And so when you look at why kids aren't participating, and they've had many, for years, it sounds like they've had many groups that have studied this, and the decrease. It is hard to go out 3 or 4 nights a week and not win a game. And the games that we did win, many of those are games that those teams will now be in this group of 10 or 12. And so that also then pulls out our ability to be successful.
Can you dig a little bit deeper on the equity piece? I'm very interested about how, is it a gatekeeper? Is that what you're thinking? Like the being in.
I can, Judge, you want me to take this?
Sure.
Okay. So when you talk to any of these superintendents, there are dynamics within the school that that kids aren't able to participate in some of the youth sports programs or the private sports that go on. And now that is a gatekeeper. You're absolutely right, Director Colton. It becomes a gatekeeper to high school athletics. And so kids that are home babysitting have to be home right after school babysitting, kids that have multiple jobs. We have those students in our system as well. And so they are not able to participate and access the sports at the same level that students who maybe aren't experiencing the same socioeconomic barriers.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you explaining it like that, because it's our community and it's happening. So thank you.
I appreciate you asking that, because I had on my list of wondering how much youth sport clubs and prep programs impact this. I think I would, we used that as a reason to add the 6th grade intramural program a year ago. And I absolutely believe that is, when you look at this, we're providing an opportunity for our kids at that 6th grade level that hopefully is convenient, attached to the school day, and having transportation there. So I appreciate you asking that question. Judge, I'm curious, you mentioned the, let's see, your wording was the flexibility within your scheduling matrix to increase competitiveness. And I think that, it's interesting to look at the difference. I mean, so boys basketball, you can see their win-loss record here. What are they doing? They're going to the state tournament this week, right? So you have different competitiveness in different sports. But how much do you also see it, not only in different sports, but as you see different cohorts of kids, maybe one team will come up and be more competitive for a few years. What's the flexibility for the AD and the head coach to adapt the competitiveness of their schedule for different cohorts of kids that may come through and desire and maybe have the capabilities to be a little more competitive?
Well, let me go back to swimming. Joe Fisher said, how can I challenge my program and stay at a high level in this new conference? And, I believe swimming has 12 or 14 approved contests they can swim in each year. We would schedule approximately 8 in that conference just to satisfy the demands or the bylaws of that. And then we would go find 4 invites, for example, Saturday invites against some of the premier swim programs across the state to challenge his program. So that's the flexibility in swimming, for example. Boys basketball, yeah, they're going to the state tournament and they're having a great year. But when you look at our 2 lower level boys basketball teams, our 9th grade team and our 10th grade team, right now they're below 500 on their records. So we know that may follow, and this good class that we have now, and maybe next year, we may see a decrease in boys basketball, projected based on records. So each schedule has some openings in there where we can go schedule against the suburban schools if we want to. The state allows us to do that. This conference will allow us to do that. There's talk in this group of 10 where Mesa City plays Clear Lake in almost every sport. That's a big rivalry for them up there. We're going to honor that and help them. Ottumwa's going to want to play Fairfield in a couple sports. There are these close rival towns that are close to these, group of 10 schools that we want to try to help honor traditions, and rivalries and things like that. So
I really would be missing an opportunity here, and I want to make sure I jump in and be very clear on something that was stated. As a district that's committed to equity, I don't believe it's about kids not having the capability or being capable. So that statement about we have kids that may be more capable in groups that come through, I think we believe strongly that all of our kids possess the capability to achieve academically, athletically at high levels. It's really the systems that we put in and being able to provide success for them. And it's athletics is no different than academics. We have to build that success in, but I really want to be clear. This isn't about us not believing that our kids are capable.
And my apologies, because I think I was the one that said it. I was not desiring to. My desire is if there is an opportunity that the coach and the ADC that kids would, it sounds like with the swimming example, desire that competitiveness. Certainly, that's why I'm a firm believer, like I said, in the 6th grade intramural program, because I believe there's a lot of kids that have some great opportunity. We have a responsibility to provide them the opportunities, not because they can afford some youth sport club, because I believe that is creating a great divide.
yeah, and also just don't lose sight of the fact that this is not a long-term decision. Superintendent Reisner mentioned we'll probably be back to the table here in 3 or 4 years. I think this is my 4th realignment since I've been the AD in 19 years. So the 3rd Ankeny High School coming on board down the road, and then a couple of other 3A schools that are approaching 4A enrollment numbers. This discussion will take place again in 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. And if we're having some success and have kind of built this thing back up, then the board and the administration at that time decide, okay, we're ready to take on a bigger challenge and try something different.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. That was made very clear by the superintendent group that ability to come back together in 3 or 4 years and review how's it working, how are our kids responding, how are our community responding, what are our gates, all of those pieces to look at that.
Any other questions on the CIML topic? Okay, then we will go ahead and take public comments right now only on the CIML realignment. So if you have a comment on the CIML realignment, please raise your hand and you will be given permission to speak. And we have Peterson. And you have been given permission to speak.
Hi, yes, this is Mark Peterson calling with a question, mainly a question. I was just wondering if the downward trend for participation in athletics, is that a national trend? Is it a trend with certain cities, demographics, size of cities? Just kind of curious how we compare to other districts in Iowa or nationally, and just if any research had been looked at along that line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your question. Are there any other comments on the CIML realignment? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and move on. And remote campus interest. Superintendent Reisner.
Yep, thank you. So we did a remote campus survey the dates are on there, sorry, that at the beginning to middle of February. And so we just wanted to bring that information to the board so you could see the survey results. And then at the next meeting, we will have an update on more of the remote campus planning that's occurred. Some of it, of course, is going to be to come, because we really, until we know exact numbers, it's hard to align programming and staffing and all of that. But we did want the board to have the ability to look at the data tonight, and then come back at the next meeting with kind of an overview of the plan.
Superintendent Reisner, you said exactly what I was planning to say. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin Meek here to walk us through the results of the survey.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So we have here is the results of the survey that was sent out. You have the dates that were on there. So the survey was open for 6 days. We received just shy of 1,200 responses. So what that means is this representative of approximately 25% of what we consider to be families of students in the district, because what we did ask folks to do was fill out this survey for every child. So some families may have filled it out more than once. We had one response that was recorded in the form other than English, because we did have the form translated into multiple languages. The response for that was May, and that is included in the full tally. So what I did was I coded our response. We had three sort of selections that families could select. I would be interested in my child attending remote campus. I may be interested in my child attending remote campus, but I need more information. And I would not be interested in my child attending remote campus. And so what I did here was I put would be and maybe coded as positive, and would not be as coded as negative. So hopefully that makes sense in that those sort of bullets at the top there. So we have for notable find. I'm sorry.
Can I, Jamette here? Can I interrupt you just for a second? I think it's the second language speaker in me. Can you tell me what the difference is would be and maybe? Like I know the difference, but in this context.
Sure. So the language on the survey specifically said either I would be interested, I could commit right now, or I may be interested, but I need more information before I would choose either yes or no.
Thank you. That helps. Thanks.
Absolutely. No, it's no problem. Thank you for asking for the clarification. So our notable findings there, this is a kind of a long document, so I won't necessarily go through all of it, but we have just some what I would consider notable findings for what I found to be notable looking through the data. Of the students who responded favorably, so of that would be or maybe responses, secondary students appeared to have the most sort of trended more favorable, right? So that would be grades 6 through 12. Our next bullet point there says there appears to be considerable interest in learning more about this option. So a lot of may be interested but need more information answers for grades specifically 3rd, 8th, and 10, 11, and 12. So that we had a lot of maybe responses for those particular grades. The largest groups of students or largest groups of families with students in the Ames Community School District who said, according to this survey at least, who would be willing to commit to sending their child to remote campus next year right now. So those would be, absolutely would be responses. The largest groups were for students entering grade 8, and then our students who are going to be graduating seniors next year. So those are those two grades where we had the most interest in folks who would be ready to commit right now. Does that make sense? All right, great. Eric, if you could scroll down just a little bit. I am going to go over the pie charts because I love my pie charts, right? All right, so our form responses by option and by grade, right? So these are just would-be responses. So these are those families that are willing to commit, like I said, right now. The largest is at Ames High and at Ames Middle. So of our pie chart here, that would be the sort of one of the teals, right there on the right-hand side, 43 responses, and Ames Middle at 37 responses. Our elementary schools that have the highest percentage of would-be responses are the highest is at Fellows, the second highest is at Sawyer, The third highest is at Mitchell. So Fellows had 15 yeses, Sawyer had 13, and Mitchell had 11. And then we have our sort of other pieces of the pie here that are a little bit smaller, but you know, everywhere had at least some families that said yes. Make sense? Any questions on this pie chart? And these are broken down in more detail in further pages, broken down by grade, broken down by building. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Are those pie charts population normalized? Like what would you expect the Ames high number to be as a percentage just based on student population?
Sure. They are not population.
I'm trying to think of how they delta
the
from
would-be
that.
responses. So this is of the would-be responses. So of the responses of families that I would be willing to commit, 32% of them were from Ames High. 28% of them were at Ames Middle. So it's not a percentage of the school, especially since the people who responded to the survey, we only have 25% of our district who responded. It didn't necessarily make sense to norm it to the percent to the sizes of the schools with such a low response rate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the question. If you could scroll down again for me, Eric. Thank you so much. And these are those total positive responses by building for that maybe. This is our section that had, for our positive responses, we had more here. So at Ames High, we had 130 families who want more information before they'd be willing to commit. At Ames Middle, we had 83 who wanted more information before they'd be willing to commit. Fellows, 41, Sawyer, 29, Meeker, 26, Mitchell, 20, and then it sort of goes down the board there. In the following pages, it breaks it down by building, and this is total positive responses by the grade, by district-wide, so for all buildings. So I thought this made sense to have together because with our remote campus, obviously we'll be pooling students, right? And then we have by building in the following pages, which I could break that down, but we did put that in sort of notable findings. Third grade had a lot of maybes. 8th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade had the most would be interested.
Erin,
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. I think you probably said this, but of the 25% of people that responded to the survey, the highest percentage was in secondary of the responses, or am I making this up?
Of the total responses?
Mm-hmm. Who responded more, elementary or secondary?
I would have to look at that. I actually didn't break it down. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd be happy to look at that for you. It could just take me a couple of minutes and I can grab it and give it to us as we're going throughout the meeting.
I suppose I could add it up because it's all here. I was just wondering if I missed it.
No, it's no problem. I'm happy to get that for you.
No, just to clarify, Director Colton, are you just saying how many responded favorably that they may be interested or they would be interested?
Not, and I think Erin might have said it.
She did, not overall.
Not overall. Yeah, favorably. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I think that Erin, I don't think she's asking about the response rate. I think the question is just around who responded with the highest.
Favorably. Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Secondary by far.
Okay. You did say it. Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
That's what
no problem at all.
Director Colton, if you go to the second page, Eric, if you'll scroll up just a little bit. Yes. If you, up just a little more, sorry. If you look here in the chart, number 3, the total positives, it's broken down there by grade level.
So we have the maybe and the would be broken down by grade level.
Thank you.
Sure.
Erin, did you give us the overall percentage of the 1178 that was would be or maybe?
I did not, but I'd be more than happy to get that to you in just a couple of minutes if I look at one of my pivot tables. I think what this data would lead me to believe is that we have a lot of families who just want a little bit more information.
Which in a way
Any
is
further questions?
no,
Sorry,
no,
go
I was
ahead.
just saying, which in a way is exactly what we were looking for, right? If people
Okay.
are even remotely interested. Yep. Thank you.
I can't take credit for the survey. I just did the data afterwards.
I do want to just thank the district for doing this. You know, my family is certainly interested, and I think I've been noticing over the past week, there have been several national stories about this trend that, you know, many districts are finding that this serves many families. And I've seen several stories here in Iowa and other districts. And so I think this is interesting, and I appreciate the district's willingness to innovate in this way. And so I'm interested to see where this goes.
Did the survey include any information to find out kind of the why, or anything demographics, or basically the question I would wonder is why did these families want to do this, and what students would it be serving?
Sure, I'm sure that actually Director Mixdorf could speak to that better because she helped put the survey together.
This survey in particular did not speak to the why. We didn't ask families to tell us why they were interested in this option. We know we have students who are successful in this option. As Director Bankin just shared, we know that this isn't just in Ames that people are exploring this option. We believe in offering families choice, and this could add to our programming for students, would be some of the whys.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I just had a procedural question. I was under the impression, is this going to the Teaching and Learning Committee? Or you had mentioned, Superintendent Reisner, that it's coming back for a discussion in terms of the remote campus in general, that tonight this was about the survey, but is it going to the committee?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. They have a meeting
Wednesday.
Yes.
All right, if there isn't anything else from the board, then we will take any public comments on the remote campus interest survey. Are there any comments from the public? Okay, I do not see, oh, I do see a hand raised. Ana Del Corazon, you have been given permission to speak.
It's Gina Del Corazon again with my wife's Zoom account. I live at 1504 Marston Avenue here in Ames. I have a first grader at Meeker. I wanted to just share our family's appreciation for the remote campus. We've had an extraordinary experience with our son's teacher this year. And I appreciate the flexibility that it's given us. And I think, you know, my son is getting a really high quality education. We're able to tailor it in ways and engage, you know, as we feel safe and as we see fit with both our, like, you know, family, cultural and ethnic needs, as well as our son is able to learn Spanish more with online courses that we're supplementing. So I appreciate the flexibility that it's given us. I really want to be able to stay in this district and support the district. And I think we really need a remote option for that. I understand the complexities and the challenges that it presents from a staffing perspective, but I just wanted to voice our support. And I think, you know, would be happy to share more thoughts about how it was helpful for us and what would be, if there are ways parents could support it, we're just happy to share in whatever way to sort of acknowledge the difficulty and also, you know, help enhance in whatever way is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Any other comments from the public on the remote campus interest? Okay, then seeing none, we will go ahead and open our public forum. And so if you would like to speak as part of our public forum, you may raise your hand. And just as a quick reminder, please, if you are a student, you can state your name and school. And if you are a resident, you can state your name and address.
Sabrina, we have policies for discussion on.
Oh, how did I skip that? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Madison, I see you have your hand raised, and we will, as soon as we get through our policies for discussion, we will open our public forum. I apologize for that. Okay. Policies for discussion. And we will turn this over to Kristen Johnson.
Thank you, Director Shields-Cook. It's an easy one tonight. This is another group of the 300 series that I had gone over so that we could align them with the IASB policies. A lot of these had already been changed, and in order to put them on the same review schedule, we have brought them before the board. All but 2 of them are recommended with no changes. 2 of them are brand new to the district. First one is 303.8. The one that encourages civic activities by our administrators. And the other one is 306, the succession of authority to the superintendent, as well as decision-making authority and designating decision-making authority in the case of the superintendent is unavailable.
And these are all ISB.
Yes, they all are, with the exception of replacing his, her with their in policy 302.6.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions on the policies for discussion?
No, thank you to the policy committee. You guys are flying through this one, so thank you. Thank you. That's a lot of work, so thanks.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public on the policies for discussion? Okay, seeing none, now I will go ahead and open our public forum. And Madison Olila.
I had a pop-up that came up that said we are not able to give Madison permission to talk based on a version of Zoom that may be in use right now.
Oh, Madison, I'm sorry that we are not able to give you permission to speak. And please, if you would, send your comments to us via email and we will make sure to get back to you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak as part of the public forum? Okay, I think I've given good wait time. Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public forum and we will move on to our consent items. And I will entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent items as presented.
Second.
Moved by Perez,
Second.
seconded by Benkin, and Superintendent Reisner.
Gifts to the district, Brian Iverson and TJ Maxx, anonymous donor, and Ames High Booster Club.
All right, it has been moved by Perez, seconded by Benkin to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. And moving on to our action items, we have the 2021 ACSD MHP Iowa CIPS Business Associate Agreement.
I move the board approve the business associate agreement with MHP Iowa and Central Iowa Psychological Services.
Second.
Moved by Perez, seconded by Benkin. Discussion. Superintendent Reisner, are you the one giving an overview on this?
Actually, if you scroll down, I think under Darcy Cousins is giving it. And then I know it's hard when it's on screen. And also Darcy is joined by several people from the committee that worked on this to answer some questions. And I really appreciate Director Colton. I appreciate you and Director Linkaitis submitting your questions so that we were able to follow up and be able to provide those answers for you tonight. So that is really helpful when that happens. So thank you very much.
Oh, so are we able to speak about the screening tool as well, or no? That was just that was one of the questions I had. Is this part of, because of the agenda item, can we talk about the screening?
Okay. And Darcy Cousin.
Yes, thank you. And I am being joined by the work committee, and that is Brian Carrico, and Rachel Crofta and Amber Franzine. And they have worked with a much larger committee on the screening and the agreement. So I am going to defer to Brian and his team as they have prepared to talk about the screening and everything that we're doing to prepare for the screener for our students. And so Brian, if you want to talk about how SIPS will be supporting us through this process.
Absolutely, thank you. So far, what we have is, as of about 3 minutes ago, when I last checked, we have 85 students that have signed up for the screening. And that's after the first week, or not even quite a whole week of opportunity to sign up. So we're really excited about that. SIPS is providing us the agreement that you just looked at is an agreement that talks about what we have as FERPA, what they have is HIPAA, and that's just how do we use that information? How do we make sure we keep that confidentiality in that information? So that's what that agreement was, is saying that they're going to use FERPA, we're going to use, they're going to use HIPAA, we're going to use FERPA, and we're going to make sure that the kids' information is kept confidential and that we do that based on that agreement. SIPS is also going to provide us with a licensed mental health therapist to be a part of the clinicians and be a part of the end of the day meeting to review all of the kids' scores that may have been above the normed average, that we're saying that they could possibly see a clinician for I guess not necessarily a mental health issue, because we're not diagnosing, but the screening is showing a concern. And so with that licensed mental health therapist, they're going to be a reference and a resource for us on what information we give to parents, how do we share stuff with them, with the parents, and making sure that we are watching and looking at everything that we need to look at for the best of the kids. So that's kind of what SIPS is doing for us. Now, in that, we are going to pay SIPS for the consultation role of their role. What we have currently now is we have an agreement with SIPS to come in and do our school-based therapy. And if we ever use them for any type of meeting, or if we ever use them for an IEP or anything like that, they bill us for hours on that extra what they do. And this is considered a part of that extra that they're doing for us. And so therefore, they're going to invoice us how many hours they have at the end.
So they will, if I understand correctly, they will help with after the screening results, after we know where we are with the numbers, and they will help us navigate that piece, but they will not provide service to the students?
Well, they can, and that's a great question. We have school-based therapy with SIPS in the elementary school. In the middle school, we have YSS. And at the high school, we're going to introduce innovative counseling here next week, or the week after break. So each level has a different school-based mental health therapist or a provider that comes into the schools. So SIPS is just one of those providers. Now, if the kids are in 4th grade and if they score above the norm and their parents say they do want them to participate in some type of school-based therapy, then SIPS can provide that at the school. But it doesn't necessarily have to be SIPS. They can go to any other provider within the, wherever they want to go for that. But SIPS is the one that's doing it within the school. Does that make sense? Am I answering what you needed?
And
Okay.
and I think it's important how we communicate that to the parents, like, because if they're contacted by a clinician, and if it's something, you know, like, so it would be important for the caregivers to be aware of where our responsibility ends.
Yeah, Rachel, I know you're on here, and I know that you've kind of done this before with another screening. Would you like to kind of address how that might look as far as what we do share with the parents in that process?
Yeah, we actually did a screening quite a few years back at the middle school. And so what we do as far as the parent notification after the screening for students that got identified as high risk is a school staff member. So we've talked about either the counselor or the student and family advocate that works in that building would be the one to contact the parents by a phone call, preferably by the end of the school day, to let them know that your child did score high. And that is where the mental health counselor will be able, like, before we make those phone calls, will be kind of debriefing with us to let us know specifically for each student what we should share with the parents. But then we will have options for the parents. So we're not just telling them this information and then leaving them hanging. Options to consider, such as school-based therapy, community-based therapy, services through the counselor or the student and family advocate at the school. Some parents might say, I had several instances where I made the phone calls last time we did this, and the parent said, yep, we know they already have a therapist, and I just didn't know that as the school counselor. So some parents might already have services in place, but basically having a menu of options that in that initial phone call with the parents to be able to talk to them about what kind of supports are even out there, and then helping connect them with those and walking them through the process. So if a parent wants to access the school-based therapy, there's still a process they have to go through, paperwork to fill out. It still goes through their insurance. So it's not like automatically they're going to start seeing the therapist. We still have to follow the process to get them established with whatever type of support they feel is appropriate. We can just kind of help let them know what the options are and walk them through securing the resources that they're interested in.
We have also talked to some of our providers that would, if there's not insurance or if it's not covered, but some of our providers have said that they can work with us to still help those students that may need that additional support. So we have that also to offer to parents. And
I don't want to take over the time, but I have a question about the screening tool itself, that it asks to for the sexual identity, and I was wondering if that is what's the purpose of it, and if we have to do it, could we do it optionally?
Well, unfortunately, this particular screener that we chose because it did elementary, and that was one of the big things that we wanted to make sure that we had access to, was for elementary through, uses gender and grade as their norms. So if we don't put in on the RCADS Excel sheet, if we don't put in their gender, it won't norm it for us, and we won't know who is considered high risk. So what we have done is one of the things that we talked about with the principals was that we are creating the screening, and we're not asking students what their gender is. I'm creating all of the screenings, and I'm putting their names, and I'm entering the gender that's on Infinite Campus. So that way they don't have to have that choice at this point. But that's one of the things that I think we can definitely look at in the future with the screener. This time with the screener that we used, again, we really were anxious to make sure that we have it in the elementary levels, and this was one of them. The other one that we could have used was very pricey, and we didn't feel that it was that much better than this one, which was free. So that's kind of where and why we're using it. And yes, unfortunately, we do have to use the gender and the grade to make sure that we have a correct norm for data.
What happens if the school has this information that a child is potentially high risk based on the screening tool and the parent isn't interested in seeking treatment for them?
Good question. That's kind of gets into a little bit of a gray area for us. If we can see that it's not, if the student is failing to thrive in school or is having difficulties, and we know that the parent has received that information but is not doing anything about it, there is the possibility that we can contact DHS for denial of critical care. And I know that we have done that in the past. But I think that was kind of a last resort. I think the thing that we would try to do is make sure that we keep good data and continue to talk with the parent and let them know what we're seeing and what's happening at the school. That would be a great thing to be able to use as a school intervention to make sure that we're addressing the needs the best we can at the school and gathering that data and making sure that we're sharing it with the parent.
Yeah, I would add to that too, that this screening tool is just one piece of information, just like any assessment. So when we're sharing that information with parents too, they'll definitely keep in mind that this is just a one-time snapshot of how they answered these 47 questions. But taking that into account, the school counselors and the student and family advocates will have this information. So if we're noticing other concerns, such as their functioning at school, their social emotional functioning, or their academic functioning, this will be one other piece of information for us to help understand what could potentially be going on for that student, and then helping us support them in an appropriate way, including further conversations with the parents or guardians about how they're doing and how this might tie into that.
Does that mean that this? Sorry, Michelle.
I just have one quick question. Does every student answer all 47 questions, or does it depend on their responses to a previous question?
No, they answer all 47.
And I do want to go back to the previous question really quickly. I think it's important to note that we will be getting active consent already from parents. And so the students who are participating in the screening, those parents have already said yes to proceeding with this. And so generally, and even those parents that I've already talked to about mental health services in school, they've been very open. And like Rachel said, we are here to answer any of those questions and to support the parents along the way as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Good point, Amber. Thank you.
And I might have misheard, but I think Rachel, you may have mentioned that this information will be available to the counselors going forward. So does that mean that the results of this screen go into the student's permanent file that other people will be able to look at in the future? Or basically, does this track along with the students, or what did you mean that it'll be available to people later on?
No, definitely not going into any file where other staff members would have access to it. Just the counselors and advocates, the people who are overseeing the mental health support and social emotional support for the students. So we will have the information compiled. I'm not sure specifically. I have to talk to Mr. Carrico about what specifically is going to be in those documents or how they'll be stored. But just for our own reference in supporting students, definitely not. Other staff members would not have access to this.
Yeah, we'll keep the data so we can get some baseline data on our district and on our needs. But we'll also be able to monitor students as they go through to see how their mental health grows or their social emotional grows. So that's an important piece, that we keep that data so we can look at it, but that will only be like Rachel said, with counselors or SFAs. It's not something that we'll share with teachers. It's not something that, stays or would go into their file. So like when they graduate, the CUME file, when we hand it back to them, it won't be in there. It is something that we keep as a different counseling file for our students. Now, if they came in and asked, of course, we have to show it to them in their counseling file, at some point if they ask, or if a parent asks. But it's not something that we just give out like we do at the end with transcripts and that sort of thing.
Okay, and then one last question, Brian. It was kind of the question I had when we last talked about this. Will the students actually see their scores?
No, actually, we have found a way, and I don't know if it was Amber or Rachel, one of you two, I think, found a way to not hide, but to collapse the screen so the scores don't show up. And what's going to happen, how we're going to do that, is after the students completes the screening, then whoever the greeter was will open that up. They'll see the score, and then what they'll do is they'll be able to take that students to either the debriefer or the clinician, and then I will be able to go back in and close their view, so they won't be able to go back and see their screener after it's over with. Now, we will print it off and we will send it home, but the student won't be able to go back in and have access to it.
Okay.
So Brian, you said something. So all of this, you see it when they're taking the screening, the test, basically. It's all of it happening the same day, in the sense they take it, they move on to a debriefer or a clinician. Okay, so am I understanding that right? Okay.
Yeah, right now, today, what I did is I created a schedule for the students that we have. So I started putting in names and times based on, and what I was doing mainly was the elementary schools. So we're trying to keep our kids in the same classroom to go at the same time, so we're not mixing kids for mitigation reasons. And so what we're doing is we're going at about every 15 minutes, we'll bring in 5 students down. They'll be greeted. We'll go through the greeting with them. Then with 4th graders, we're probably going to stay pretty close. So if they have any questions on what any of the reading means, we can help them with that. And then when they're done, we'll take them to either the debriefer or the clinician.
And is there, so because I think I asked you this question before, because I feel like there's 2 touches with the caregivers. The first, the initial consent to do the screening, and when you touch base, when the clinician touches base with, is that before they talk to the student or after they talk to the student?
After. So after we finish all of the clinicians will talk to the students. And then what will happen is at the end of the screening, when we finished all the students, then our group of clinicians will get together with our counselor and our SFAs from that building. They'll go over that information and they'll weigh it out, and then they'll make some recommendations for when they call home. And that's what Rachel kind of covered before, of what will be stated, providing services, here's something. One of the biggest things, and I think Rachel did a great job of explaining it, was that this is just one piece of data for your child. It's like a health checkup. You go in, and if their high blood pressure is up a little bit, we give that information to you, but we're not saying we know exactly that there's hypertension here. Again, we do not plan on, nor will we do any diagnoses. That is not what this role is for. This is just a screen to say, here are some potential concerns, and give that parent that information.
Sounds like a great initiative, Brian. I guess one question I'd have, and this is more for after the fact, when you come talk to us like in June or July, what's the criteria your team's looking at to evaluate whether this is successful and whether it's something that we should continue doing?
Great question. One of the things that I've asked and what I can hope to do is when we're finished with this, I would like to pull together some of the mental health providers and people that I've had contact with over the years to go through the data with us. And so what we were hoping to be able to do is to sit down, you know, like Warren Phillips from SIPS, Dr. Jeff Kerber, who used to be with the Department of Public Health, you know, and have a counselors and our task force all meet together to review this data, to kind of get some baselines and some trends, and then come up with some ideas on how do we improve what we have here, and also what type of services should we be looking for within our schools to support the kids. I think what I would feel comfortable with is the increase of well-being and seeing the number of students that are taking this and scoring below that norm, and not showing risk at this point, because then that indicates what we're doing in our schools is helping with our social emotional learning, with counseling, with interventions, with school-based therapy. Those are all some things that would really provide us with some data to say, hey, you know what? In 2021, we had this many fourth graders that scored above the norm, but then in 2024, we had this many, and we really made some progress because of implementing the social emotional learning, because of lessening the stigma, because of those kind of things.
I just had one more quick question. So you said you had 85 kids who signed up. So was this an email that was sent out to all parents to see if they were interested in having their kids assessed? And I see you nodding your head, so I'm going to say that's a yes. Will it always be done that way? Like periodically you'll send it out to all parents, or will there be times that maybe someone self-identified that I don't mean self-identified, that a teacher or someone in the schools identified that a child is having issues and maybe this assessment would be given to that child in particular? Or would it always be?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility because we do have access to it and we do have the norming. The only thing that we want to be careful there with is if we give it, then we want to be able to make sure that we are able to address that student with that professional. You know, not that our counselors aren't capable. By no means am I saying that, but because we've set the standard to have either a social worker, a psychologist, or a licensed mental health therapist, we want to make sure that we have that capability. So if we did give it, we'd want to make sure that we have somebody else knowledgeable of us giving that. But yes, that's definitely something. Now, we did send it out in an email. We did translate it to the different languages. And we also sent it out in paper form from the schools. So we try to cover all of our bases. And so, you know, hopefully we got the word out. And again, I think the high school and the middle school were a day behind elementaries getting it out because we'd had an elementary principal meetings where we had discussed it. And then the next day I emailed and talked with the high school and the middle school. So I think we're having great numbers so far. You know, when I took a look at the data, I think we had 1,054 kids in those 3 grades that would be eligible. And we were hoping for at least a third of those. So, you know, we have some room to go, but we still have a lot of time yet before the 15th date.
Because Brian, the letters have the letters gone out? I'm speaking from a parent role because I represent a few of these grades, but they've not gone out for all of the grade levels yet, have they?
I guess I can't answer that for sure. Okay. I know the elementaries were going to send them all out. Gotcha. At the same time. And again, I don't know, when we last talked, that was the plan.
I just wondered 85 out of how many at this point? Is it 85 out of all 3 of the grades or 80? It sounds like it's, okay.
Yeah, well, actually we have 2 from the high school. We have 20 from the middle school. We have 13 from Edwards, 17 from Fellows, 21 from Meeker, 8 from Mitchell, and 1 from Sawyer on my last count. Now, I know that doesn't quite add up to 85 because we've had some during the meeting when I was checking that I haven't put on the count yet.
Brian.
Yes.
Really quickly, I can verify schools sent their letter out today, and I believe the high school will be sending them out tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
All right. If there isn't anything else, it has been moved by Perez and seconded by Bankin. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Brian, for your, and Rachel and Amber as well for being here and for your work on this.
Yeah, we had others on the committee that were very much a part of it too. So our committee did great work, and I just want to say thank you to all of them for their help and their sticking with us as we went through it. So thank you to that committee group.
Great, thank you. All right, we are going to really quickly here. I've checked on procedure. Since Madison Olila had technical difficulties during the public forum, we are able to go back and give her the opportunity to speak. So Madison, you have been given permission to speak.
Hello, my name is Madison Olila. I'm a junior at Ames High School. I'm a student in the TLC program, which stands for the Therapeutic Learning Center, for those of you who don't know. But in the TLC, Caitlin Clark actually helps us work on group skill building, one-on-one interventions, and helping learn how to manage our mental health needs in unique ways, depending on what works best for that specific student. I believe everyone deserves this opportunity if needed to get support with their mental health, and all students deserve to get the resources that they need. I feel like the TLC is not talked about enough on the level that it should be because of how stigmatized mental health is. 1 in 5 kids between 12 and 18 are diagnosed with a mental health disorder, and that doesn't even add in all the kids who are not getting help or have not been diagnosed. Caitlin Clark has 17 students with high mental health needs and is juggling many tasks at once. I feel if the TLC program had 1 EA, more students would be able to get access in this program. If we had a helper teacher, many more students could be reached at AHS. The TLC has shaped me into the person I am today, and I genuinely really do believe that. This program has taught me how to push every day, even when it feels impossible. I have gained so much confidence, strength, knowledge, and self-love thanks to this program. I'm a junior in high school taking classes at ISU in the Child, Adult, and Family Services program to eventually become a social worker. I'm graduating high school a semester early and then will be going straight into college as a sophomore because throughout high school, I got enough college credits to finish my freshman year at ISU. This program opened my eyes in so many ways and gave me something to be able to be passionate about. Without TLC, none of this would have been possible, and I wouldn't be nearly as successful in school as I am today. I cannot put into words how many times this program has picked me up and put me back onto my feet. TLC is a crucial part of AHS that has potential of helping so many more students. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison, and thanks for hanging in there with us on the technical issues. Okay, we will move on to our next action item, which is our Go Bond prepayment.
I move the resolution authorizing the redemption of general obligation school bond series 2019 dated June 5, 2019, approving the First Amendment to escrow agent agreement and levying the task for fiscal year 2022 for the redemption of general obligation school bonds series 2019 dated June 5, 2019.
Second.
Okay, moved by Franzen, seconded by Lenkaitis. Discussion? Chris, do you have anything you want to add here? I know we've discussed it before.
We had discussed this at the last meeting when we went through the tax rate for next year, and that we were going to pre-levy $2.5 million of the 2019 bonds.
All right, and we will vote on a roll call. I will go in alphabetical order. Director Bankin?
Aye.
Director Beerbaum?
Aye.
Director Colton?
Aye.
Director Franzen?
Aye.
Director Lenkaitis?
Aye.
Director Perez?
Aye.
Director Shields Cook? Aye. Passes 7-0. Policies for action.
I move the board approve the policies as presented.
Second.
Moved by Perez, seconded by Franzen. Any discussion on these? These are the ones that were presented at the last meeting. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Items from the board.
I just wanted to quick thank Jerry and Dr. Nyberg for providing the board with an opportunity to tour the new high school. It was wonderful to see the school that our community is going to be providing to future students. And I thought it was really inspiring to hear Dr. Nyberg discuss the plans the staff has for using the new high school. And I can't wait to see students in that space and using it to the maximum potential there.
I agree with Alan. That was a wonderful tour. I'd like to also wish the boys basketball team best of luck in their game on Wednesday.
I wanted to thank Madison for speaking up and talking to us this evening. She did such a wonderful job, and I really appreciate how prepared she was and how well she did. Thank you, Madison.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to items from the superintendent and turn it over to Superintendent Reisner.
I do not have any additional items tonight.
Excellent. All right, then our board planning calendar. We will have a work session on March 22nd prior to our regular meeting. And then we have scheduled an additional work session on March 29th. There will not be a regular board meeting on that evening. Is there anything else on the board calendar? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Move we adjourn. Second.
Okay, moved by Perez, seconded by Beerbaum. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye, everybody.